Okay, great. So from my side, I have got 45 minutes before the closing from Mr. Lever. So to introduce you this nice topic, the bioeconomy, to give you an idea about the structure. What is the bioeconomy? Then show you the driver and goals, the raw material and technologies, and which market and tendency are taking place. And of course, I will give you the final ideas. Bioeconomy. Whom of you has listened to this, has heard this topic? I will ask you here, the audience. Maybe someone of you has already heard about that. So generally, I guess not everybody knows what it is. But we are working on that to make our biotechnology famous. We are since 15 years working in a network to give you an idea what biotechnology is. We are in a company supported by different institutions and companies. So it is really clustered by different branches, and bioeconomy has got different sectors, including has got different disciplines, and it's very complex but also very passionate. The bioeconomy, I will give you a definition. You can read it here. I don't want to get into details. Centralized, we have 3 points. First of all, it is about the usage and of biological resources. That means the biogene by itself. Second point is it's the knowledge, the construction and procedure of biotechnology knowledge and technology solutions, and combine those both and use them. This is the technical part. And the third point is that there's a capacity to circulate that is sustainable and that is resilient. And this means in a future economy system. And so we want a transformation from fossil to biogene, and that the resources are circulating. It's not easy, of course. Now, bioeconomy looks nice. So you're thinking about biology, maybe. So first impulse, you think about food and food production. 2.4 billion euros is the turnover in Europe, and 60 are primary sectors. But we are still 40%. And that's a lot of sectors that are important. So having a closer look to those, this is bio-based economy. We have got a lot of different sectors, and it's still a huge turnover of more than 700 billion euro. Just to give you an idea what we are talking about. So second number that is relevant is maybe having a look at processing industry. 7 point. So the turnover of the bio-based economy is what we see, a very high turnover. And the 540 billion euro is the procedure industry in general. So we are talking about sustainability, about climate neutrality. Of course, we have the goals of this means the sustainable development goals, and some of these points were mentioned beforehand. Investment in sustainable economy, and this is one of the central approaches. Also, we are talking about resilience, and that's not that hasn't started since the Ukraine war. It has to be also with the chemical branch since a couple of years, and having a closer look to the CO2 reduction in the chemical industry in the last 30 years, we can see clearly a reduction. And we have got a reduction of 60% and at the same time doubling the production. You can see there's a lot of movement in the industry, and this market is growing right now. In the US, in the biotechnology, we have got a high investment in the USA. So, of course, politicians worldwide have appreciated this tendency, and which are addressing directly to the bioeconomy. So you can see there are not a lot of gray dots here, and we had a huge changes the last year, and we have got a lot of growth in those strategy. As you see, it's on the political agenda to push this topic forward, but we have to talk about business models. If there is no demand, we have no final production. So, for instance, for the chemical branch and for the product branch, the sustainability is very important, and we are always depending on these branches on CO2. They cannot decarbonize. They need the CO2 for their materials, and they always will emit CO2. That means they have to use this CO2 or look for CO2, low CO2 sources. And we also need to use material that's not toxic, that's not dangerous for water, and that's not harming the environment.
And of course, there are degradable microplastics. We don't have to talk about that in detail. That is a central issue we won't get rid of soon. But there are alternatives. Especially in the bioeconomy, there are ways to finding a solution to get rid of existing microplastics and to avoid further microplastics. And in concrete terms, it is to replace raw materials from fossil to biogenes. And we are talking about drop-in molecules, circular materials, and we have to have new products in the market, renewable materials that so far simply aren't there. And we need to be circular. That means I not only change the material, but also change the design. And all the wonderful polymers that we're using, and it's good that we're using them, but they're so complex that the structure of the product is such that it's difficult to biodegrade it. These are the approaches that we need to go for. But there is, of course, another effect. If I go away from the fossil aspects, I will go into greater detail, then the plant technology that we currently have is something that will not suffice. I need new processing chains and types of processing. So again, what was there first? Is it the new raw material, the demand, or the processes? So it's a very complex situation. How can we resolve this? And what will, in fact, contribute is the type of raw material that we choose. So there are two areas of action. For one, we have the change to raw materials from fossil to genetic, and we need to use biological technologies and knowledge to fulfill our objectives. Let me talk about raw materials first. Sure. The question is fossil change to bio. Do we have enough biomass to be able to replace everything that we currently use in terms of fossil? Well, the answer is perhaps. These are the biomass flows in the European Union. You see the green path, that's agricultural use, and the remainder is of course going to food and feed, and biomaterials in chemistry. We're talking about 133,000 tons. So this goes into an energetic use of biomass. And what we had this discussion in Germany, biomaterials, food was taken off the shelves because we use area for bioenergy that simply isn't available there. So is it your tank or is it your plate? So you see, what is the portion of biofuels in total in the EU? We're talking about minimal percentages compared to what we have for feed. So most of it is forest biomass. In other words, it's wood. So these are not products that can be used for feeding animals, less even so humans. We're talking about wood. So that doesn't mean that we don't have to deal with it. No, we still have to deal with that issue, but the relations the proportions are here. So the magnitude isn't all that great. So let's take a look at the worldwide use. So this is biomass utilization worldwide, first and second generation total N4 bio-based polymers. So you see, feed and food we're talking about 60%. Biofuels, 2%. Polymers, we're talking about per mils, 0.038. So the portion that the chemical industry is used for in terms of biomass is minimal. And on the other hand, you have the question, this is a current picture, the way it is now. What it's going to be like in 10 years' time, who knows? But the question remains, how much biomass do we actually use in the chemical industry at the moment? And we're talking 10, 12, 14% perhaps, what you have in biomass. So we still have a major proportion of fossil use here, and we're talking 12 million tons of oil per day in the chemical industry. Can we replace that with biomass? I doubt it very, very much. So again, here, as we heard earlier, the world is not simple, and bioeconomy isn't simple either. So biomass is one of three regenerative sources of raw materials. And do I want to use recycling streams or CO2-free products? It's all about carbon. So you have the linear production chain in chemistry. If you look at the bioeconomy, you see, first of all, you have plant biomass, and then this way you fixate CO2 in biomass. So biocatalyzer will give me the same products that you currently have through oil and gas, but I have more possibilities than that. I can either get there through chemical means or by fermentation or biocatalysis. So I can close the circle, and this is a message. Bioeconomy doesn't mean biogene carbon, can also be fossil carbon. And it is being used, and that's a normal thing to do. I have fermentation plants in steel plants in China, for example, in Ghent, in Belgium too, where CO2 from the steelworks is being captured and then fermented and is then sold as ethanol. I mentioned that earlier, the bio-based shares and the product value of chemicals and chemical products. You see them here, the value creation, the values are very similar here. And if you look what it is made up of currently, you have a number of products and product fields that are being addressed. This I wanted to show you, where we have bio already included. Much of it is classic. Oleochemistry has always been bio-based, but other areas are increasing, and we have a growth rate of about 4% per year in terms of sales, but also in terms of shares. And the second part that I wanted to show to you is the exciting bit. That's biotechnology as such. What can I do with it? What is it? Well, biotechnology is not new, 100 years at least. The term has been around for about 100 years. It's been used, making beer, making bread, even though they have different names for it. It's something that has been around as long as people have been around. But it's been in the last couple of decades because of molecular biology, because now we understand DNA, and I can modify DNA, and I can change or adapt metabolism in such a way that the product is improved. So in areas such as the pharmaceutical industry, but also in chemical industry, we have enzymes in detergents that allow us to wash with 30 degrees and still get the clothes clean. This helps to improve the power of detergents. Even if you have detergents where the color is still remains the same, that's due to enzymes. They eat away small fibers and thus get back the brilliance of the textile. Medical field was the first type in penicillin to prepare yeast. And this is, no matter if it's in the pharmaceutical industry or chemical industry, the catalyzing effect is extremely good if you look at medical agents. To do that in a synthetic way would be completely difficult, but in biology that is done in one pot, just like when you make bread. And I have a few further examples for that. Biotechnology is not only pharmaceutical industry, chemical industry, it's also agriculture. We're talking about genetically modified plants. In Germany, this is critical. The world over, it's state of the art, necessary, and it will stay forever, I'm sure. I will get to that in a minute. But we are talking about a biorevolution. This is not my term. Other stakeholders made up that term. I'd like to tell you why this is such. First of all, we have completely new approaches in medicine. On the one hand, it's gene therapies, stem cells, and it's also biologics. It is about antibody therapies, complex molecules that you couldn't do with synthetic medicine. And the incredible thing about it is not only that you have new agents and new approaches to therapy. With antibodies, you can have a direct approach, but you don't have the pill anymore for a group of people that are indicated, but you have a treatment for the individual person. So on the basis of the genetics of a person, you can design a therapy that is personalized. And compared to what we're doing currently, this would be a great leap forward. And also energy. That's of course important. Bioenergy is being discussed in a very critical way, but there are areas where you cannot get your way around bioenergy and biofuels. We're talking about aviation here. In the long term, the climate goals that you have in aviation cannot be fulfilled if you do not use bioethanol. In the long term, you need kerosenes, you need a liquid fuel, because the energy density compression is such that it has to be so strong that you can actually lift people and lift the whole plane. The battery technology maybe one day will be at that point to provide that, but at the moment this is a solution that will have to will still need a lot of time before it is around. So there are airlines that are currently using biofuels, and you will have major increases in this field because it's the only way to actually get a hold of this issue. Chemical industry already mentioned. 2 points here, 2 examples that I'd like to take. Bioethanol, it's a type of chemical product. It's used for polymers, polymer retards, and like a battery, can be produced. Glucose, corn, maize, and sugar cane. That's easy. That's much more efficient than what you do in a raw oil refinery. Look, artemisinin, it's a malaria vaccine, well known by the press. You can get it through extraction from glucose, maize, and again, sugar cane. There is no other way to do it in a biotechnological way. You can do it in a cheap and safe fashion.
The last point, I have mentioned that are GMOs. This is the reality. We have 181 million of fields of genetically modified crops. 83 is soil, and 29% is this value will increase. It's corn, 29%, and it is necessary to use these GMOs to make plants resistant against and also resilient in case of because of the climate change, and there is a higher dryness and higher stress. And of course we have got at 2050 we have got 9.7 billion people on the earth. So another topic that has been mentioned by Mr. Lieber is the synthetic biotechnology, because I cannot only use biotechnology by itself, also I can include the digitalization. To give you an example, the sequencing of the DNA has been a huge improvement, and it took just 13 years to get the human genome. Today it's really cheaper, and it takes just 1 day. So you can see there's a drastic change in the research area. the bioinformatic, the biotechnology, IT technology, and to have some certain intelligence, deep learning in the net, using them as a tool. So you can design the enzymes, optimize them, and influence the metabolism. The big companies that are working on that, Geomatica in the USA, through deep learning, they are establishing predictions to optimize the products. So we cannot explain scientifically because one enzyme is better than the other one. So with this fact, you know that bio-IT, with this data and with this net, can use these tools for applied science. And it's a very good sign to show us that the daughter of Alphabet is capable to solve a problem with an amino sequence and to predict certain structures. Nowadays, with algorithm, with neuronal nets and deep learning, this is possible. And then the third point is the genome editing by itself. To change the genome, to change it, to create a new protein. To give you an idea, CRISPR-Cas, it got the Nobel Prize. It is a very easy tool with a very high effect to change the genome. And the possibilities and options are enormous. With a very simple tool, I have the possibility to interfere in the metabolism, and especially through that path, not only to produce through yeast certain manipulation, I also can create synthetic organism. I can modular establish a metabolism that are not appearing in the nature. I can create molecules in a bacteria that are generally not producible, and that gives us a lot of options. This is a big field, and this is the reason why millions of dollars are invested in those researchers. So from that we have the biofoundry concept. This is a concept to test and to learn, to design and to build it, so that we can design a whole organism, to reproduce this organism, and to have a deeper look if it is working fine as we want. And I would like to show you the video to give you a further insight how in real life this looks like. This is a video from the Kobe University. It's a very big biofoundry in Japan. Maybe you can read the subtitle if you are capable of Japanese, but this is not really important. First of all, we want to show you how a biofoundry works. And this is the design. Nowadays it is automized with robots. We have a computer system behind that. That means that the application of that we need only a couple of people in place. And with the structure I can see which reaction is catalyzed, which metabolism is taking place, and how I can build the molecule. This could be simulated here and have a further look into detail. Override the DNA, produce the molecule and bring it to a cell. This is reproduced automatically here, And we have got a high number of organisms here, a lot of samples. You can appreciate here these installations are very precise, so that in a couple of days you can produce a cell there where years ago you need years to produce them. At my time when I was in university, this took weeks, and nowadays we need only half a day. So it is really quick. And you see how these processes are getting improved, especially with tools like CRISPR-Cas. And that shows us clearly that we are at the beginning of something big. Right now, currently, with this organism, in the microbiology, we have only 1% of the cells that are reproduced in the laboratory. Maybe 7 to 8% of organisms are shown at the laboratory. So we have 90% of metabolism that are not really known and that we cannot reproduce so far in the laboratory. So it sounds really great. Why don't we use biotechnology everywhere? So I will show you why. We have got a scale up, because from the laboratory to the production is a huge step forward. And the challenge is very big. So to give you an idea, this is a plant of 3 liter, and we are scaling up 150 liter, 1,000 liters, and at the end 150,000 liters, and then the fermentation unit with 500,000 liter. And these are numbers where the chemical industry could work. This path is very young. Biotechnology is not the fermentation. The problem is, how can I extract the final product? So this is 70% of the costs, because here generally I have a lot of water. I have biomass, an organism that needs to be separated, and currently this is not a standardized process. It is a solution, individual solution for each process. And as you can guess, this is still not efficient enough and not optimized as chemical branch requires. So in the food production, as alternative protein source, this is a huge topic. We want to give food to 10 billion of people. We need not only better seed, we have to change all the agriculture system. We cannot feed 10 billion people. Just having in mind the emissions, this is impossible. So we need alternatives. So that could come from plants, from insects, and also cultured meat. This is a very interesting idea. And new seeds, we have talked about that already. But in addition, we need also new protections of the plant. Most of them are based on fossil and CO2 loaded. And of course, we have to think about monoculturing, etc. This is described already, but also we have got other demands on the market. And the consumer wants nothing synthetically in. It should be all clean label with no ease, no conservation, no synthetic flavoring, and of course biogenetic can work here. These are alternative proteins, all those companies that are active in this branch. You can see that this is the version number 3. The version number 1 was just approximately 10% of this company. and it's just a couple of years old. As you can see, this area is more and more becoming interesting in different fields. That means it is really a huge market because there is a need, and this need is growing. And we need those alternatives. We need those investments. To be very specific, we have got here an example, vertical farming that is currently built. It is about protein for feeding, for animal feed. We are producing insect protein that is used for pet food. And this should be also in the general food end markets. You can do that, of course, you can use the insects, but in this moment the feeding of the insects needs also higher quality. Another example is the aroma of the raspberry. You need currently you have got flavors that are not based on natural processes, and we know that from a yogurt. So we use currently the alpha ionone. And to produce 1 gram, you need 20 hectare and 111 tons of raspberries. That's really impossible to produce. 2 other areas that I would like to introduce: personal and home care area. We need a driver is the degradability, or a lot of shower gels that they're using have microparticles and fossil ingredients, and you never have the opportunity to get them back because it's in the sewing water already. So the industry has challenged that and has substituted those ingredients with ingredients with no toxicity.
Again, here we have green content, and they're not toxic, but they're still durable and stable, and they have improved product characteristics. It's good for the skin. Evonik, for example, has a biotenside that they used to improve the washing power in a detergent or in a shampoo, because this is completely biodegradable combined with effective solubilization of flavors. If you test it, it's out on the market only in France. It's a toothpaste. If you have it in your mouth, it has a completely different flavor to it. It's a very soft foam, and after that you feel great, as if you had a professional dental cleaning. And again, bio-based, CO2 neutral intermediate. Okay, last areas that I would show to you: chemicals and polymers. Again, we have the CO2 neutral intermediates. The chemical industry has the CO2 neutral products, everything to reduce the carbon footprint. For that, you need biomass as a raw material. You need to avoid toxic ingredients. They have to be recyclable. And of course, there is this replacement of additive. You don't want anything that causes cancer, and new functionalities, access to new molecules. This is a map of different, not yet commercial, on the left-hand side commercial, on the right-hand side products that are bio-based. Currently there is some newer data. Some of that didn't go through, but there are other building blocks that have not been included here yet. One example, Tovesto, not very far from here. They have a bio-based aniline, which is good for proteins, and it's a pure biological process which helps to create it. So the polyurethanes is used here, and you don't need any plastics anymore. Another one would be PEF, which is an alternative to the PET bottle that everybody knows. Again, here it's bio-based, degradable, sustainable, but I have a great deal of other advantages that go with it. It's extremely lightweight. You can put in hot filling, and that's exciting too. The barrier against oxygen, in other words, the resistance is there, and it has a gas barrier performance. In other words, it lasts longer. Very often you have to throw away products because they go bad because they haven't been packaged properly. Bioethanol, as an example, is here. Clarion, first sun liquid plant in Podari in Romania, and there we have 50,000 tons. That's the plant size to manufacture ethanol. A better example yet is UPM, which is just being built in Leuna in Germany. 550 million investment. It's a biorefinery, and the annual production capacity should be at 220,000 tons. So you have the product range, not only the special chemistry, the functional complex molecules are being manufactured, but also basic chemicals can be made, because there is a pressure from the client. The market demands it, and the framework conditions are in play. We just heard that. The framework conditions are there now. This is the moment where the chemical industry will have to react. What's the conclusion? Well, I first of all went overtime, sorry. I tortured you with a long but hopefully interesting presentation. I have a few facts here. This is the role of bioeconomy. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm ready for your questions. Yeah, you didn't go too much over time. We may have time for 2 or 3 short questions. The toothpaste with raspberry flavor, that's what I want. Yeah, I'd like to try that, if you can get that aroma into it. I love raspberries. Okay. No, we have exhausted it. Ah, no, there is one question. Yes. Oh, well, there's one thing for sure. There's always one person who has a question. My question is this. One thing that I didn't see was biofuel. I think you can make minerals that will actually take me on my plane ride. So, how many oils do I have to use? I guess a whole bunch of barrels, I suppose, to have it scalable in that size. That will be quite a challenge, isn't it? And can it be done financially? Is it actually doable? I imagine it's really, really expensive. Yeah, biofuels. I give you the example of the kerosene. Sure. That and beyond, algae, of course, are a very important aspect. It's not my favorite, but it's a point. But at the end of the day, the question is, where do I need a liquid fuel? And bio-based, sure, it makes sense. In aviation, possibly also for ship navigation, there it makes more sense. So wherever I need a very, very dense compression, this makes sense. But of course, this is depending on the process and the environment where it makes sense. Fischer trucks on the basis of CO2 power to X, but it makes sense. Biomass would make sense here too, but in aviation too. But I also have, of course, negative emissions. That is another issue of the certificates here. But scalability, that's of course the point. In most cases, we see that in special chemistry, where I have smaller volumes than in basic chemistry in the use of biomass. And the point in biomass is the logistics. No matter what kind of biomass you put to use and you get to a certain point, you have to transport a lot of water. That's the thing. So we need new concepts. We need decentralized processes, and we need more speed in that. To be realistic, we will go into the crackers with a certain share of biomass. In feedstock, we will have crackers with biomass and recycled material, oil, for example, vegetable oil, and also possibly natural oil. There will not be a complete substitution, but in smaller volumes, yes, we can have a substitution through biomass, amino acids. I already mentioned that. That is already being manufactured on the basis of biomass, and then we're talking about quite a big volume. Mr. Leber, a small question to your charts. In one of your charts, there was sugar on the basis of wood chips. So we had this green bar, and one of them ended in feed, and that was 3 times as much as plant-based agricultural use for people. Yes, that of course is the problem for the agriculture. Most of the area in agriculture of the proteins that are being manufactured, and of course in the end of the day the green gas emissions, 70% of that go is to husbandry, to livestock, having animals. That is very, very intense. The protein from the plant, to get it into the animal and then making it something to eat, that's highly inefficient, and that's something that also we cannot solve. But unless you have alternative proteins, this will be a difficult one to handle. And sugar made of wood, yes, that's possible. At the end of the day, large part of wood is cellulose, and these are basically sugar molecules that can be broken up, can be made sugary, and then you can again manufacture ethanol. That's what Clariant does. They use residual materials, non-eatable residuals, and then they have the so-called second generation ethanol, second generation processes. They are based on non-eatable materials. Normally, it shouldn't be used, whatever sugar is eatable shouldn't be used for chemistry, but the efficiency you get from 1 hectare is incredible. Sugar beet, you have an incredible level of efficiency, and you shouldn't exclude it, even though strategically political, perhaps it's not really wanted. But we will still have regular sugar products, I hope. Oh yes, absolutely. Some sugar for you. Thank you.